I have made 3 police state films. I have also, written books and news articles on the subject. And the problem is when you cover FEMA camps is there's so much evidence, so many congressional hearings, so many news articles, so many documents. The problem is knowing where to start. Executive orders. This is how they introduce you. See, they're introducing it all. They've denied they're building all this for all these decades. Now as they unveil it, they're putting their PR spin on it. So Executive Order 10,990 allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control of highways and seaports. That's been reaffirmed under PDD 51, under the John Warner Defense Authorization Act and others. Executive Order 10,995 allows the government to seize and control the communication media. Executive Order 10,997 allows the government to take over all electrical power, gas, petroleum, fuels, and minerals. Executive Order 10,998 allows the government to seize all means of transportation, including personal cars, trucks, and vehicles of any kind, and total control over all highways, seaports, and waterways. Executive Order 10999 allows the government to take over all food resources and farms. Executive Order 11,000 allows the government to mobilize civilians into work brigades under government supervision. Executive Order 11,001 allows the government to take over all health, education, welfare functions. What's happening through the imploded economy that the foreign central banks are engineering? So they make you be beholden to the government. Designates the Postmaster General to operate a national registration of all persons. That goes on through the Selective Service. Executive Order 11003 allows the government to take over all airports, aircraft, including commercial aircraft. Remember when they shut down all flights after 9/11? Executive Order 11004 allows the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities, build new housing with public funds, designate areas to be abandoned, and establish new locations for populations. Remember Louisiana, Mississippi, Katrina?
Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job. The FEMA director is working 24 hours.
Executive Order 11005 allows the government to take over all railroads, inland waterways, and public storage facilities. Executive Order 11,051 specifies the responsibility of the Office of Emergency Planning and gives authorization to put all executive orders into effect in times of increased international tensions and economic or financial crises. Executive Order 11,310 grants authority to the Department of Justice to enforce the plans set out in executive orders, to institute industrial support, to establish judicial and legislative liaison, to control all aliens, to operate penal and correctional institutions, and to advise and assist the president. So that's your FEMA camps. Executive Order 11,049 assigns emergency preparedness functions to federal departments and agencies, consolidating 21 operational executive orders issued at 15-year period. Executive Order 11,921 allows the Federal Emergency Preparedness Agency to develop plans to establish control over the mechanisms of production and distribution of energy sources, wage salaries, credit, and the flow of money in U.S. financial institution. In any undefined national emergency, it also provides that when a state of emergency is declared by the President, Congress cannot review the action for 6 months. PDD 51 says never. Up on screen are photocopies of the Miami Herald, and this goes back into the 1980s when they had congressional hearings dealing with shadow government and martial law. There's the headline, The Secret Government. And it talks about secret summits, a plan to take over the government. And it shows the people that were in charge of the continuity of government, Dick Cheney and others. And then we have a congressional hearing where we have Congressman Jack Brooks and others during Iran-Contra bringing up the secret plans, and they're told by Congressman Inouye that that can't be discussed. It's a national security issue.
In the 1980s, the concentration camp program got a big boost.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, So may I request that you not touch upon that, sir?
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked. I believe that it was,
may I most respectfully request that that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
And tragically, the only member who got close was Jack Brooks, and he was stopped by the chairman. But the truth of the matter is that, yes, you do have those standby provisions, and the plans are there, and the statutory emergency plans are there, whereby you could, in the name of stopping terrorism, apprehend, invoke the military, and arrest Americans and hold them in detention camps.
Throughout history, criminals get control of governments. They use phony crises to enslave the public. And they're taking your pension funds, they're taking your money, they're raising the taxes on you, they are going to squeeze the daylights out of us all, and that's why they're geared up for martial law and to take the media over, because this is quite a gamble by the establishment. You know, we should have grand juries indicting the bankers and having them turn states' evidence against each other, and this whole criminal shadow government, national security state should be exposed. Everything it's engineered and bring in total tyranny and start arresting people for their speech. So it either goes into tyranny or into liberty. And believe me, folks, liberty is probably where it's going, because this tyranny is so horrible they've got planned. Let's go ahead and go to Congressman a year and a half ago on the Homeland Security Board wanting to know about PDD 51. Now, this fight went on for a year. The cover sheet of Presidential Directive 51 stated the president's a dictator. Congress has no power during any emergency, including economic. So now Congress isn't involved in continuity of government when Congress is co-equal to the president and the courts. In fact, the Founding Fathers said Congress was above the courts and the president, but then later courts said, no, they're equal. Now they're saying they're not. Okay? Because it's harder for a dictator to take control in the Congress because there's 500 people. Separation of powers. The president is where your main dictator will come from, so it's the weakest. It follows the orders of Congress and then executes those orders. But then the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee said, I am co-equal with the president in national security. Let me see PDD 51. And they were told no. But the cover sheet alone states the president's a dictator. Then we see last year PDD 51 being executed, and members of Congress, Senator Inhofe and others, being told martial law will be declared if you don't hand total control and immunity over to the banks. And they followed orders and did it. So the martial law is now in place. And with that comes the FEMA camps. Will we get to that place? Not if we expose it. But we're already got our neck in the noose here. Is the executioner going to pull the lever? I don't know. Let's continue with the congressman talking about PDD 51.
Most Americans would agree that it would be prudent to have a plan to provide for the continuity of government and the rule of law in case of a devastating terrorist attack or natural disaster. A plan that would provide for the cooperation, the coordination, and continued functioning of all three branches of the government. The Bush administration tells us they have such a plan. They introduced a little sketchy public version that's clearly inadequate and doesn't really tell us what they have in mind. But they said, don't worry, there's a detailed classified version. But now they've denied the entire Homeland Security Committee of the United States House of Representatives access to their so-called detailed plan to provide for continuity of government. They say, trust us. Trust us, the people who brought us Katrina, to be competent in face of a disaster. Trust us, the people who brought us warrantless wiretapping and other excesses eroding our civil liberties. Trust us. Maybe the plan just really doesn't exist, and that's why they won't show it to us. I don't know. or maybe there's something there that's outrageous. The American people need their elected representatives to review this plan for the continuity of government.
All right, that's Congressman Peter DeFazio. Now, that was a year and a half ago. Mr. DeFazio, the cover sheet says the president's a dictator and that Congress has no authority over continuity of government. That's why they're now saying Congress can't see it, because they're declaring and executing that power. Now, we fast forward a year plus to October 3rd, and here is Congressman Sherman, who we interviewed here on air, other congressmen we interviewed, and Senator Inhofe, saying they marched in and told them martial law will be declared if you don't do this. So we go from the 80s to where don't talk about the martial law plans and the FEMA camps. If you want to know about that, you can know about it in executive session, Congressman Jack Brooks, to, oh, Congress, you're not allowed to see the plans now. To Congress, do what we say, we're under martial law.
The only way they can pass this bill is by creating and sustaining a panic atmosphere. That atmosphere is not justified. Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, that the sky would fall, the market would drop 2,000 or 3,000 points the first day, another couple thousand the second day, and a few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no.
Somebody in D.C. was feeding you guys quite a story prior to the bailout, a story that if we didn't do this, we were going to see something on the scale of the Depression. There were people that were talking about, martial law being instituted, civil unrest, all this kind of stuff. Who was feeding you this information?
That's Henry Paulson. We had a conference call early on. It was on a Friday, I think a week and a half before the vote on October 1st. So it would have been the middle, what was it, 19th of September, okay. We had a conference call. In this conference call, and I guess there's no reason for me not to repeat what he said, but he painted this picture you just described. He said, this is serious. This is the most serious thing that we face. It's going to be far worse than the Great Depression of the 30s. And all these things, he was very descriptive of exactly what would happen if we didn't buy out these toxic assets, okay. Which he abandoned the day after he got the money.
For any emergency, including economic, anywhere in the world, the executive is over the legislative and judicial, over the courts, over the Congress, which is unconstitutional. It's supposed to have separation of powers. The people aren't supposed to be divided, what the government always tries to do. The government's supposed to be divided so that you can't ever get a dictatorship. Well, this is what the founders said. This is what America is. It's why we love the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So President Bush signed this National Security Directive, and it says the continuity of government program will enhance the credibility of our national security posture and enable more rapid, effective response and recovery, and it goes on. The catastrophic emergency means any incident, regardless of location in the world, that results in extraordinary levels of mass casualties, damages, or disruption severely affecting the U.S. population, infrastructure, environment, economy, or government functions. And then Congress asked for the full secret document, and it's still classified to this day. Obama has continued breaking his promise of transparency and has not released the full text of this and other memorandum. Connected into this is his new announcement. He is creating, with this executive order titled Establishment of the Council of Governors, it says here in the document that they are taking the governors, the states, the police forces, everything under the control of NORTHCOM, that's the Pentagon, and Homeland Security. But don't worry, the states have their say. The president is going to appoint the 10 members, 5 governors from the Republican and 5 governors from the Democrats. Kind of like Bush called the 9/11 Commission independent when he appointed it, or Janet Reno appointed her own Waco investigation team. This would be like Hitler appointing his own Nuremberg judges. I mean, or Al Capone had his own court case. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And there it is at whitehouse.gov, the executive order for anyone that wishes to see that for themselves. Separately, I have the RAND Corporation's plan that they put out last year. And this plan, Stability police force of the United States, justification, options for creating U.S. capabilities. This has already been implemented covertly in the last 15 years. But now they're just being open about it, and it has all the maps here of how Stability Police Force headquarters to run your local city. They have systems for medium-sized police forces, large police forces. They have the Stability Unit for small police units. Again, Communist Russia had this. Communist China has this. Russian news is freaking out, saying America gets its own Politburo. On the Richter scale of tyranny, this is about a 10. And it goes back, because now all these conservative groups are going, oh my gosh, it's martial law. Oh my gosh, Obama's having a big power grab. And yes, he is. But Obama is just the teleprompter reading minion or frontman, just like Bush was. He's just better than Bush was at it. It is the system that's doing this. Big central banks threatened martial law in early October of 2008. Give the trillions, not 700 billion, but trillions of dollars. The overriding issue is we are under martial law right now. In 1986, under Rex 84, they opened 12 secret Army camps to test if they could keep them secret while they held federal. Now they hold state prisoners as well. Federal prisoners would then be given a few years off their sentence if they agreed to not tell family about it and to go to the labor camps. It is a labor camp, and under the revised military rules, it allows any U.S. citizens to be put in it under forced labor. Here is the Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program, Army Regulation 210-35. It's exactly 30 pages long. I suggest you Google Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program. Even if you don't have a computer, go to the library. This is important. Now, this is the big piece of news. This is to establish setting up prison labor camps, negotiations with correctional systems representatives to establish prison camps, governing criteria, civilian inmate labor camps, policy statement, governing provisions for operating civilian inmate prison camps on Army installations, procedures for establishing a civilian inmate prison camp on Army installations, infrastructure, inter-service, interagency, and interdepartmental support agreements, working with local police at the FEMA camps. In 2002, I published my book, Descent into Tyranny. I've been covering it since 97 when it was declassified, but I put it in my book, Descent into Tyranny. This sucker was set up in 1986 at 12 camps. It's since doubled to 24. And from 86 to 97, secretly at labor camps, U.S. citizens, non-military prisoners, were worked on FEMA camps. Now, this was beta testing. They would tell them, you'll be given leniency and only serve half your sentence if you agree to labor. The minute you don't, you'll be sent back on these military bases, but you can't tell anybody national security. See, they were testing, can we keep camp secret from local police or get them to work with us? Can we keep camp secret from the media? So for 11 years, they kept this sucker secret. Reagan, Bush, Clinton. And then Clinton declassifies it and says it's a good thing in 97, and they double the number. We had secret copies of this when I first got on air in about 95, 96, with just the cover sheet of it, and people made fun of us and didn't believe it. Then it was declassified. This is from Army.mil. So here it is, the big kahuna. This is just one section of these, training the troops, training the infrastructure, creating the larger cadres to expand the archipelago of gulags. New legislation authorizes FEMA camps in the United States. And it says 6 major camps across the country with hundreds of sub-region camps. Now, if you watch my films and read the documents we put out, that's exactly what we said the camps are and how they operate, because we reverse engineered all this. The camps are already built. It's when they want to openly announce they're doing it that they then pass a law. And they say, oh, all these shut down military bases that they've been keeping refurbished and putting barbed wire facing in and putting in showers and bunks, and we knew that those were to be the FEMA camps, because in the FEMA documents and the congressional leaks and from people that worked at the camps, we knew, and we would list the camps. Then we noticed when it was declassified in 97 that the very camps that had been, quote, decommissioned under the base closure, because they'd said back in the 80s under Rex 84 they were going to use the camps in Congress. So we said, you want to know where the camps are? They're old military bases, and they're old POW camps from Italians, Germans, and Japanese. Guess what's in here? Guess what's in the bill? They've reintroduced the National Compulsory Service under H.R. 1444. It says for mandatory national service. Defense Department announces civilian expeditionary workforce in Pentagon Directive 1404.10. It says management retains the authority to direct and assign civilian employees either voluntarily or involuntarily or on an unexpected basis to accomplish DOD mission. So, see, they're saying they're going to create a 7 million man. That was in the New York Times. The Congress said. I kept saying 1 million because Obama said as big as our army, as big as the military. That'd be 1 million people. They say 7 million now, and that they're going to draft you into this, and they'll decide, no more draft boards, if you stay here or if you go overseas. But this just broke. I just showed you the earlier terror training manual saying those that talk about the Constitution are terrorists and are a danger to police, those that are in Second Amendment groups. Here is the MIAC strategic report, and this is 2/2009, the modern militia movement. And they mix in here people that believe there's 9 FEMA regions, people that believe there's a NAPTA superhighway, and they show the official NAPTA superhighway map the government put out. Doesn't exist. Those that don't want RFID chips being planted with them, and they mix it in then with white supremacists and others, and they say, we want you to understand the terrorist symbols. It's don't tread on me flag of the Founding Fathers. You know, the flag of the Founding Fathers, all of it. We're going to go over this. This is amazing. They say in there that there is no such thing as a New World Order banking takeover, as hundreds of newspapers a day say there will be a new bank of the world that you pay carbon taxes to. It just doesn't exist. You're insane terrorist if you believe it. You know, I remember my grandfathers, and it was normal just when you were at the dinner table, or even my dad, to explain how governments work and how history worked, and they taught the military. You don't have the military on the streets, and we're here to defend the Constitution, Bill of Rights, not what the president says if it violates that. And we've gone from that now to a strategic report, 2/2009, the modern militia movement. And then they mix gun owner groups, pro-gun groups in with white supremacists. They say those that believe in a new world order. These theories vary, but most always involve a globalist dictatorship. They show, and I'm putting on screen right now, official North American Union SPP maps that have been on CNN of how they're going to have every major highway be an international toll road from Mexico up into the deep north of Canada. And they just say it doesn't exist. These people are insane. I mean, this is a high level of PSYOP, isn't it, Gerald Celente?
Well, you know, that's the way they always do things. You know, they lump them all together, and it's one size fits all. I have a question. Do you believe that the military will fire on its people?
They're going to stage riots, and then it's going to look like, oh, they stopped the riots. It's reasonable to set the precedent. Like, oh, we do have FEMA camps for medical care and where you can stay. You know, the troops are here to help at car wrecks. That's how they're rolling it out. And I believe that, I think the way they're going to manipulate the military, I think a lot of them are going to fire on U.S. citizens.
Because that's a question we're going to pose in the Trends Journal in the next edition. And I happen to agree with you. They'll stage riots. We always see these people that they call anarchists that always have black, you know, always have dressed in black and have masks on.
They've been caught being police sorry, go ahead.
No, exactly. No, I agree with you. And I think that they are going to fire on the people, unfortunately.
No, don't shoot me, please! Don't shoot me! I haven't done anything! Don't shoot!
In this training manual that's going out to police everywhere in the country, it has a, don't tread on me flag. It shows America freedom to fascism and the film Zeitgeist in it. We just showed that, and shows it next to the Turner Diaries, which was a white supremacist thing about killing police. So see how they do guilt by association. I mean, this is just off the charts, and this was sent to me by the Missouri Information Analyst Center. A police officer sent it to me. That's where they got it from. And I've seen these in Texas versions and others. It's the same thing, but they're updating it. I mean, how do they say none of this exists and then mix in mainstream things that are happening with white supremacists and tell police that people are dangerous if they're into this?